Michael Reed adjusted his tie as his polished leather shoes echoed against the tiled floor of a modest hotel in Ohio. The minimalist decor and subdued atmosphere clashed sharply with his usual preferences. High-end suites with skyline views in bustling cities like New York or Chicago. At 42, Michael was a celebrated architect renowned for designing iconic skyscrapers. His portfolio was a testament to ambition and precision. Yet, here he was, in a small town far from his element, overseeing a potential project he privately considered beneath him. He glanced impatiently at his watch, a habitual motion that underscored his constant need for control. The staff scurried to accommodate his every need, sensing his impatience. For Michael, time was money and delays were unacceptable. He planned to finalize his business in 48 hours and be on the first flight back to Manhattan. Yet, as he stood in the hotel lobby waiting for his coffee, Michael had no idea that his tightly managed world was about to unravel in the most unexpected way. The morning sunlight filtered through large windows, casting long shadows across the floor. A group of children ran past, their laughter breaking the otherwise subdued ambiance. Michael frowned slightly. He had chosen this hotel for its reputation as a business-on-the-run business establishment, not as a haven for vacationing families. When the barista called his name, Michael stepped forward, focused on retrieving his coffee. But before he could reach for the cup, a small figure collided with his legs. Startled, Michael steadied himself and looked down, ready to scold. What he saw froze him in place. A boy no older than 7, staring up at him with wide, hopeful eyes. The boy spoke a single word that shattered the carefully maintained order of Michael's life. Dad? The word dad lingered in the air. An accusation, a question, and a statement all at once. "I think you had the wrong person," Michael said, his voice sharper than he intended. He stepped around the boy, reaching for his coffee, but the boy wasn't deterred. "No, I don't," the boy insisted, stepping in front of Michael again. "You're Michael Reed. I've seen your picture in Mom's photo box." Michael froze. His name, his identity, spoken so casually by this child, made his heart pound. He finally managed to speak. "Who's your mother?" The boy grinned, oblivious to Michael's rising discomfort. "Laura Reed? Well, she's Laura Bennett now." The name hit Michael like a bolt of lightning. Laura Bennett, the woman he'd left behind 8 years ago, back when he was chasing dreams of architectural fame. The woman he hadn't allowed himself to think about since. "I'm Ethan," the boy continued brightly. "Mom said you were too busy to visit, but I knew I'd find you someday." Michael stared, his world tilting. Ethan, the name fit now that he heard it. He could see it. His eyes, his jawline. His son? The moment was shattered by a voice that stopped Michael's heart. "Ethan, what are you doing?" Michael turned to see Laura standing at the entrance to the lobby. Her dark hair was shorter, her expression sharper, but she was unmistakably the same woman he had once loved. Her wide eyes locked on him, then darted to Ethan. "Mom, look," Ethan called, racing to her. "I found him. I told you I'd find Dad." Laura reached out, pulling Ethan to her side protectively. Her gaze met Michael's, a mixture of shock, anger, and something unspoken. "Michael," she said finally, her voice steady despite the tremor beneath it. "Laura," Michael replied, his own voice rougher than he intended. They stood there for a moment, the weight of 8 years pressing down on them. Laura's hand rested protectively on Ethan's shoulder, while Michael struggled to reconcile the child before him with the life he had left behind. "We need to talk," Laura said, her tone brooking no argument. Michael nodded, his carefully ordered world slipping through his fingers. Michael sat stiffly in the quiet hotel cafe, his untouched coffee cooling in front of him. Across the table, Laura sat with Ethan nestled close, her hand resting on his back protectively. The tension was palpable, layered with years of unresolved history. 8 years, Laura began, her voice low but firm. "That's how long it's been since you walked away." Michael flinched. He had faced countless challenges in his life, demanding clients, impossible deadlines, but none compared to this moment. Confronting the woman he had walked away from and the child he had unknowingly left behind. "I didn't know," Michael said quietly, glancing at Ethan, who was scribbling something in a notebook. "You never told me." Laura's eyes flashed with anger. "I didn't tell you because you made it very clear where your priorities were, Michael. Do you remember what you said to me the last time we talked?" He did. The memory was sharp, like a splinter he couldn't remove. He had told her that his career came first, that he wasn't ready for distractions. She had stood there, her eyes filled with tears, one hand resting on her stomach. He had noticed, but hadn't asked. He had been too focused on his next big project. "I was wrong," Michael admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I made a terrible mistake." "You think saying that fixes anything?" Laura shot back, her tone colder now. "Do you have any idea how hard it's been for Ethan? How many times he's asked why he doesn't have a dad at school events? Why his friends get to build robots with their dads and he doesn't?" Michael looked at Ethan, who was now engrossed in his notebook, drawing what appeared to be a solar panel. He felt a pang of guilt so deep it made his chest ache. "Laura," Michael said, his voice stronger now, "I can't undo the past, but I want to be there for him now. I want to try." Laura's expression softened slightly, but her guard remained up. "This isn't just about showing up once, Michael. He's not a project you can manage between meetings." "I know that," Michael replied, and for the first time he felt the weight of his own words. "I'm not asking for your forgiveness, but I'm asking for a chance to prove I can be there. For both of you." Ethan looked up then, his face alight with excitement. "Dad, can you come to my robotics competition tomorrow? I'm showing my solar robot arm." Michael hesitated, his instinct to check his calendar nearly overpowering him. But then he nodded. "I'll be there," he said firmly. Laura raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Ethan beamed, oblivious to the charged atmosphere. For Michael, it was a small step, but one he knew he couldn't afford to take lightly. The convention center buzzed with energy as families and students prepared for the regional robotics competition. Michael navigated the crowded hallways, feeling out of place in his tailored suit amidst parents in jeans and t-shirts. He spotted Laura first, kneeling beside Ethan at a small table where his robot sat. Her calm demeanor as she helped Ethan adjust something on the machine was both familiar and humbling. "Dad, you made it!" Ethan's excited shout drew attention as he waved Michael over. Michael smiled, a bit stiffly, as he approached. "I promised, didn't I?" Ethan grinned, his enthusiasm contagious. "Look, this is my robot. It's powered by solar panels, and I designed the arm mechanism to move faster than the others in its category." Michael knelt to examine the robot. Despite its simple appearance, the design was impressive, especially for a child so young. "You built this yourself?" "Mom helped me understand the basics," Ethan admitted. "But I came up with the gear system. Do you want to see how it works?" Before Michael could answer, an announcement crackled over the speakers. "Junior Division competitors, please prepare for the first round." Ethan looked up at Laura nervously. What if the arm doesn't work under pressure? Laura crouched to his level, her voice steady. "We've tested it dozens of times. Trust your design, Ethan. You've got this." Michael knelt beside them, surprising himself. "Your mom's right. You know this robot better than anyone. Just focus on what you know. It's all that matters." Ethan's expression shifted, his nervousness replaced by determination. "Okay," he said with a nod, giving both his parents quick hugs before running to his station. Laura and Michael found seats in the bleachers, maintaining a careful distance between them. The competition began, and Michael found himself completely absorbed. He watched as Ethan guided his robot through various challenges, his movements confident and precise. When the solar-powered arm performed flawlessly in the speed trial, the audience broke into applause. "He's amazing," Michael said softly, more to himself than to Laura. Laura smiled, her pride evident. He gets that focus from you, when you're not distracted by skyscrapers. Michael chuckled, acknowledging the jab. But his focus returned to Ethan, whose robot had just been declared the winner of the junior division. "Mom, Dad, I won!" Ethan ran toward them, his medal swinging from his neck. "You were incredible," Laura said, hugging him tightly. "Absolutely brilliant," Michael added, ruffling Ethan's hair. Ethan's eyes sparkled. "Can we celebrate with ice cream? All three of us?" Michael glanced at Laura, who hesitated before nodding. "One scoop," she said. Michael smiled as they left the convention center, the weight of his usual responsibilities momentarily forgotten. For the first time in years, he felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The days following the robotics competition brought unexpected changes to Michael's life. He found himself making the 2-hour drive back to Laura and Ethan's small town more frequently, each visit leaving less time for his usual high-stakes architectural projects. Michael quickly discovered that Ethan's curiosity and enthusiasm were boundless. The boy wasn't content to bask in his robotics victory. He was already planning new projects. "Dad, I've been reading about renewable energy in space," Ethan said one evening as they worked together on a solar-powered model. "Do you think we could design something for Mars?" Michael laughed, but there was pride in his eyes. "Mars? I think we should master Earth first, but let's see what we can come up with." These moments weren't limited to Ethan. Slowly but steadily, Michael began mending his relationship with Laura. She was cautious at first, often watching from the doorway as Michael worked with Ethan. But as weeks passed, her demeanor softened. One evening, as Michael helped clean up after dinner, Laura spoke quietly. "You're doing more than I expected." Michael paused, unsure of her tone. "I know I have a lot to make up for." "It's not just about showing up," Laura said, meeting his gaze. "It's about staying." "For him, I plan to," Michael replied firmly. "Not just for Ethan, but for you too, if you'll let me." Laura didn't respond immediately, but her silence wasn't dismissive. Instead, she handed Michael a towel to dry the dishes, a quiet acknowledgement that trust might be rebuilt, one step at a time. That night, as Michael drove back to the city, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years, a sense of belonging. Michael sat in his Manhattan office, staring at the skyline he had once worked so tirelessly to shape. His assistant rattled off a list of urgent meetings, but Michael barely listened. His mind was elsewhere, on Ethan's excited face when describing his next science project, and on Laura's hesitant smile as she began to lower her guard. The pivotal moment came during a development review meeting. His team presented blueprints for a sprawling commercial project in the heart of the city, a design Michael had spearheaded months ago. But as he looked at the plans, all he could see were the unsustainable energy systems and outdated materials. "We need to rework this," Michael said suddenly, his voice firm but reflective. The room fell silent. His CFO frowned. "Rework? Michael, this design is already approved. Investors are expecting us to break ground in 6 weeks. Changing it now could cause delays and losses." Michael stood, his tone firm. "The future isn't in outdated infrastructure, it's in sustainable design. We're shifting this project to incorporate renewable energy systems, solar panels, and green spaces." His team exchanged uncertain glances, and the CFO sighed. "Michael, this will delay everything. Investors won't be happy." Michael met their skepticism head-on. "I've spent years designing monuments to ambition. It's time to build something that matters." The decision was met with resistance, but Michael was unyielding. Over the next weeks, he began integrating Ethan's ideas and Laura's insights from her work in education into the new plans. The project transformed from a traditional commercial space into an eco-friendly development, with rooftop gardens, smart energy systems, and public educational installations. That evening, Michael shared the news with Ethan over a video call. "You mean they're actually using solar panels in a skyscraper?" Ethan exclaimed, his eyes wide with excitement. "Not just solar panels," Michael replied. Smart grids, green roofs, everything you've been talking about. Ethan grinned. That's so cool, Dad. Michael smiled, knowing this wasn't just about a project. It was about building a legacy for Ethan and redefining what success meant in his own life. The crisp evening air atop the local observatory was alive with excitement. Families gathered on the grassy hill, pointing out constellations and waiting for the telescopes to reveal the wonders of the universe. Michael adjusted the blanket he'd laid out for himself, Ethan, and Laura. "Mom says we might see Saturn's rings tonight," Ethan exclaimed, clutching his astronomy notebook. "I've been waiting all week." Michael chuckled, watching his son bounce with enthusiasm. Laura sat beside him, her smile soft and warm as she handed Ethan a thermos of hot cocoa. As darkness deepened, a professor began pointing out constellations with a laser pointer. Ethan listened intently, scribbling notes and whispering excitedly to his parents. "That's Orion," he said, nudging Michael. "Mom taught me how to find it. Remember the story, Mom?" Laura hesitated, glancing at Michael. He nodded, encouraging her. "It's the story of a businessman who was so busy counting his money that he didn't notice his belt was on backward," she recounted with a playful smile. "He only figured it out when he finally looked up at the stars." Michael laughed, remembering her making up that tale years ago. "I was terrible at constellations," he admitted to Ethan. "Your mom was a patient teacher." "She still is," Ethan said proudly. "She teaches me everything about the stars." The professor moved on, highlighting Saturn's position. Ethan guided Michael to the telescope. "Here, Dad, look through this. You'll see the rings." Michael leaned in, adjusting the lens as Ethan had shown him. The sight of Saturn, glowing against the vast darkness of space, took his breath away. "That's incredible," Michael whispered. Ethan beamed. "Right? We should build a house with an observatory so we can see this all the time." Laura chuckled, but Michael turned to her seriously. "Maybe we should," he said softly, his tone full of meaning. Later, as the crowd began to thin, Ethan dozed off on the blanket. Michael and Laura sat quietly, the stars shining brightly above them. "You kept the stars alive for him," Michael said, breaking the silence. Laura looked at him, her voice soft but steady. "I kept them alive for Ethan. And maybe for a part of me that still hoped." Michael reached for her hand, their fingers brushing in the starlight. For the first time in years, the distance between them seemed bridgeable. The drive home was quiet, the warmth of the stargazing evening still lingering in the air. Ethan slept peacefully in the back seat, clutching his astronomy notebook like a treasure. Michael glanced in the rearview mirror, his heart swelling at the sight. "He really looks up to you," Laura said softly from the passenger seat. "I'm trying to be someone worth looking up to," Michael replied, his voice sincere. When they arrived at Laura's house, Michael carried Ethan inside and tucked him into bed. The boy stirred slightly, murmuring, "Saturn's rings and our observatory," before drifting back into sleep. Michael lingered in the hallway, his gaze falling on the constellation drawings taped to Ethan's walls. They were reminders of how much he'd missed and how much he still had to catch up on. Back on the porch, Laura joined him, a mug of tea in her hands. The night was quiet, the stars above mirroring the stillness between them. "He asked me something last week," Laura began. "He wanted to know if we could all live together someday, in the house he's designing." Michael exhaled slowly. "What did you tell them?" "I said it takes time to build something strong. A house, a family, it all needs a solid foundation." Michael turned to her, the weight of her words settling over him. "And what about us? Could we build something again, one step at a time?" Laura looked at him, her eyes reflecting a mixture of caution and hope. "Maybe, but this time, we build it together." Michael nodded, understanding the significance of her response. He reached out and gently took her hand. Above them, Polaris shone brightly in the sky, a reminder of how far they had come and how much farther they could go. As Michael looked at the stars that night, he realized something profound. Life's most precious moments aren't measured by success or ambition, but by the bonds we create with the people we love. Just like Michael found his way back to his family, we hope this story has inspired you to reflect on what truly matters in your life. If you enjoyed this journey of second chances, growth, and love, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. By subscribing, you'll join a community that values stories like these, stories that remind us all to cherish the little moments and strive for meaningful connections. Hit the like button, leave a comment, sharing your thoughts, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another heartfelt story. Because just like Polaris, guiding us home in the darkest nights, these stories can remind us of the light within. Thank you for being part of this journey. See you in the next story.